Over the last several months, vibe coding has exploded under the scene as the hottest way to build software, with AI writing the boilerplate so you don't have to. Instead of manually wiring up models, endpoints, and UI components, you simply describe in plain English what you want and let the model generate the scaffolding. It speeds up setup time, turns hours of grunt work into minutes, and keeps you focused on the fun stuff: architecture, UI, and business logic. Beginners love it for getting apps off the ground without drowning in syntax. Seasoned pros use it to rocket fuel their productivity. In today's tutorial, we're going to build a fully functioning weather dashboard in record time without hand typing a single line of boilerplate. I'll show you how to spin up API integrations, data normalization, UI components, caching layers, and error handling, all by iterating on simple natural language prompts. Whether you're a seasoned dev looking to supercharge your workflow or a newcomer eager to see real apps come to life fast, this video will give you a step-by-step blueprint for using AI to handle the heavy lifting so you can focus on design, logic, and user experience. Let's get started. Now, before we get to the good stuff and build an actual app with vibe coding, it's super important to lay down the foundation and really understand what vibe coding is, how it works, and what it isn't. And this is going to make you an expert and help you understand how to truly leverage vibe coding to build absolute awesome apps. Okay? So what is vibe coding, right? So it's very simple. AI generates your boilerplate, you guide, review, and refine, and focus shifts to design and logic. And this is how it should be, right? Focus needs to shift to solving problems, not to all of that boilerplate and all of these issues and stuff like that. So this is absolutely awesome. Why vibe coding, right? We want to cut repetitive setup in half. We want to prototype features in minutes, not days or weeks or even months. And we want a lower entry for new devs. Okay, so these are awesome things. They help speed up software development by a lot. So vibe coding solves boilerplate overload, context switching fatigue, and slow iteration loops. And so you want to minimize boilerplate as much as possible. You want to minimize context switching as much as possible when you're building apps between documentation, users, front end, back end, APIs, stuff like that. You want to minimize that, and you want to increase your iteration loops by as much as possible. You want to make them as fast as possible, and this is what vibe coding solves. Now, what is not vibe coding, right? It's not a set and forget tool. It requires your planning and review, and you still need to write or tweak tests and fix bugs. So for our demo, the app that we're going to be building today, we're going to be building a weather app, okay, with some interesting features, right? We're going to have city search, an API hook, okay? So we're going to have an API integration where we're going to, use a third-party service to look up our weather. We're going to provide current and 5-day weather forecasts. We're going to implement caching and error states, right? So if a user enters New York, New York, and another user enters New York and New York in like 5 minutes, we can just use the data that we already have, right? That's caching instead of firing up another API call. So caching is super important. And last but definitely not least is we're going to give it a quick UI polish. Okay, so I don't want to build an app that just works. I want to build an app that looks good and also works, right? So we're going to try to create a really kind of nice UI and an aesthetically pleasing UI for our users. Now, for the prerequisites and the setup, right, you need a code editor, right? Visual Studio Code is used by like 90 to 95% of the devs out there, right? So this is the code editor that you want to start with. I'm actually going to be using another one that's based on Visual Studio Code called Cursor, and that is essentially a clone of Visual Studio Code, except they bundle their own AI agent, okay? So it's like 99% the same, except it comes with another AI agent called Cursor, okay? And you also want to have something called Node.js, which is your kind of framework for running JavaScript apps. Now, the beautiful thing about these AI tools and vibe coding is that you can essentially use any framework that you want. Doesn't really matter, but it helps to use a framework that you have some basic know-how, some basic familiarity with, right? For me, this is going to be JavaScript, and I'm going to be using a framework called Svelte, which is a framework that I'm familiar with, and it's a great framework. It handles the front end and the back end. And this gets me to the next point, and this is our weather provider, because we need to connect to some third-party service and get weather information, okay? And they're typically going to provide you with an API key. They may be free or freemium or a paid plan. I actually know a great weather provider that you can use for free. They have a very generous free plan. And because we're going to be using a backend service that needs an API key, that we need to provide an API key, it's important that the framework that you use has a backend and a front-end component, okay? Because you never want to expose the API key in the front end, especially this API key here. And that is why the Svelte framework that I'm going to be using has a backend component as well as a front-end component. And so for the demo style and the expectations, right? Very, very simple. We're going to prompt, generate the code, and refine. We're going to be pausing and tweaking our prompts, and we're going to do some light testing, and then maybe CI later. CI stands for continuous integration. And this is where you are continuously testing the app as you're adding or removing features to make sure that nothing breaks. Now, the first thing that you want to do is you want to set up your environment. And so here I have cursor open. I have not set up my project just yet. And if you scroll down, you'll be able to pull a terminal open, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to one of my directories, and now I'm going to head over to svelte.dev, and I'm going to follow the instructions here. So this is how you set up a new project. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. I'm going to paste this here, and I'm going to call this weather app. Okay, I'm going to say yes. And now it's asking me which template would you like. I'm just going to do minimal, and we want with TypeScript syntax, and you could just select the defaults here. That's fine. Next, you want to go back here and follow the instructions. You want to do this, npm install, and you want to click on npm run dev, and that's going to run your app. Okay, so now it's giving you this localhost. You can simply open that up, and it says welcome to Svelte Kit. Okay, so now we at least have the scaffolding for our app, okay? And so at this point, we can open up this app in cursor right here, and we have the beginning of our app over here, okay? Now at this point, you want to be thinking about the features and functionality in your app. What kind of features do you want to include? What kind of features you do not want to include? So the features that we want to include is we want to have the current weather, we want to have the 5-day forecast, we want to be able to search by city, or even geolocation. We want client-side caching, and we want error states, right? We want the app to let us know if there are any issues, okay? So we have the stack, and the next thing that we need to do is we need to find a weather service provider. Now, the weather service provider that we're going to be using is going to be weatherapi.com. This is actually a great provider to start out with, okay? Because they have a free plan that you can use. So I'm on this free plan right now, and this is enough to get started and to build the initial version of the app, okay? And so if you go into this API tab over here, you can see your information here. And if you go into API Explorer, you can test things out. And so what I want to do is I want to copy this key, and I can go to my API Explorer, and I can start testing stuff, right? So here it needs one parameter. So in this case, this is London, and we can get current, we can get forecast. We have search order complete. We have a bunch of other things. And so let's say I want to do this, and now we get the results. And so it says here, the current temperature is 21 degrees Celsius or 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Sounds about right for London, okay? And so now we have all of this here. And so this is great because we've taken care of our API stuff, our API service, and then AI can take over and kind of help us get this in the app, okay? And so now that we have an API service with an API key all set up and ready to go, we can start building that part first, okay? And so on this right-hand side, we can start prompting our system. Now this here, I have it set to agent, which is the best option. And this here, you can do auto select, but I like to work with this Claude 3.7 Sonnet. This is the model that I had the best results with. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask it to build a backend component that will query this API and give us the data, right? And because we're using SvelteKit, which takes care of the front end and the back end, this is going to be very, very easy to do. And so what we want to do is we want to say generate a backend connects to a weather API and gets the weather forecast, the current, and a 5-day forecast, okay? And to make it easier, we can actually give it some more information. Now, you have a couple of options here, right? Right now, we have it set to current, but we also want to get the forecast. And so if I select forecast and I do show response, this is what we get. We get the current and we get the forecast. And this is perfect for us because we're going to get the stuff that we need. And so here we can set the days, let's say 3 days. Show, and I believe under this plan we're only limited to 3 days. Let me try 5 days and let's see if that works. And as you can see, we're still getting 3 days. I believe this free plan limits us to 3 days, and that is absolutely fine. That is good enough. So I'm just going to keep it to 3. And I'm going to provide this information here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy all this. I'm going to say API call. This is the API call, and this is what the response should look like. So it knows what to expect. And this is the response. Now, I do have this selected here. I'm just going to deselect it because it's just creating a new feature from scratch. We're not giving it any context at this point, okay? And so now it is working, and it says all of this. Let's wait for this to finish. All right, so it is done. And what's interesting here is it actually went ahead and created a simple front end to interact with our API. Now, this is something that I did not prompt because I wanted to create just the backend, but it still went ahead and did it. Okay, and it actually even ran the app. So we have the app running here. So I can copy this URL and I can open this up and run it over here. And this is how it looks. Look at this. We're pretty much almost done. Right, so it says here London, get weather, and we're also getting the data in the future, and it actually looks pretty nice. Okay, it actually looks pretty good. We can fix it up a little bit, but we're almost done. It actually went ahead and did everything else that I'm going to just show you in a second. But let's go ahead and test it out. Let's test a couple of other cities. Let's try Manchester, get weather, and there's Manchester, and there's New York, and let's try San Diego. Or actually, let's try Miami. It's really easy to see. Yeah, 24 degrees. Looks really good. And that's all from just a single prompt, okay? I actually went ahead and did it. Now, one feature that I wanted to do was when we type the name, I wanted to do autocomplete, okay? So that in case there are a couple of cities around the world with the same name, we can pick the right one. So here, there's no autocomplete. I can just type and, it's going to select the one that it thinks is the right one. But let's go ahead and implement autocomplete. And let's say I'm just starting out and I do not know how to do autocomplete. Like, do we need another package or do we need something else? So I'm going to go ahead and ask it. For entering the city or the location, I want to have autocomplete with a pull down showing different cities that match what the user is typing. Can you explain how we can do something like that? Another package. Okay, so hopefully it's not gonna write code because I don't want it to write code. I just wanted to see how it's thinking. Okay, so it goes ahead and starts doing it. So I'm gonna just stop it there because I wanted to first tell us what it's going to do. So I'm going to say, just explain, don't write code. Okay. And let's see what happens. Okay. So it says that we can use a third-party autocomplete package, right? Svelte or select or Svelte autocomplete. And that sounds about right. I think we're going to use Svelte autocomplete. Now we need to integrate with the location API service. Okay. So it's telling us that weather APIs, if available in your plan, search autocomplete API. We can also use Google Places API. Actually, this is not a bad idea because I've used this before. It's very, very easy. I'm going to check with Weather API, but if not, we can just use Google Places. And then implementation, you'd likely want to create another endpoint. This is exactly right. So let me check my weather service API and see if we can do something like that. Yeah, we have search autocomplete. Let's see if it works. Yeah, it does work. And I believe it's included in our plan as well. Let's go ahead and try this. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to say, let's use Svelte autocomplete and weather APIs search autocomplete. Okay, and this is what we have. This is the search And I'm also going to give it the response so it kind of knows. Let's also use another endpoint for this. Okay, let's go ahead and see if it does it. So it's actually installing this dependency, which is great. Okay, so it is now done. It's running the app. Let's go ahead and see if this works. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and save our changes, get everything, and now we're gonna run this app and see if it works. Okay, so we are getting an error. And so if we go back up, we can see that error, all of this failed, etc., etc. So I'm gonna go ahead and let it deal with it. I'm going to go ahead and paste this issue and see if it's able to figure it out. There's an error with the Svelte autocomplete package that wants to implement its own simple autocomplete component. Okay, this is going to be interesting. All right, so it finished making the changes and looks like it actually went ahead and did it itself. So we're going to accept all the changes here. We're going to go ahead and restart our app, and it looks like we're just getting some warnings, nothing serious. Go back here and now we see the app. So let me type a London. Okay, there it is. Looks like it's working perfectly, and we don't really need this Svelte autocomplete component because we can simply use the API to do it. How cool is this? Look, New York, New York, New York. We selected it and it works. If I type San, okay, so it automatically knows. Okay, so it knows it's San Diego. Okay, if we type San Diego, okay, so there's Italy, partly cloudy. Okay, there it is, San Diego, United States. Looks like the right temperature, so we have some forecasts as well. Looks really good. Look, this is exactly what I wanted to do. And if we go back to our app over here, you can see that we now have two components. We have the weather component, and a component is essentially a mini widget, if you will, right? It's another way to say that this is a piece of an app that's part of a bigger a page or an app, or something bigger. Okay, so we have the weather component here. This is kind of how it is, right? This is how it's being displayed over here, and we have the location. And if we go to our main app over here, this is this main page here, and as you can see, this pulls this weather component. And then if we go to this weather component right here, does this location somewhere. So if we search for location, you can see that it has this handle location select, and it pulls up that location stuff, right? Because it has this location search here. And as a result, our app is starting to come together, right? We can also select other San Diegos. And so here we can type, let's say Madrid, and that's going to be this Madrid over here, and it pulls the data. Looks really, really good. Now, the next thing that I want to implement is caching. Okay, caching is very, very important, especially in apps like this, but in all kinds of apps where you want to save on resources. And in this case specifically, because we're using an API, and chances are we're being billed, or part of our plan is X number of API calls per a certain time period, maybe per day, per month. And if we can cut down on the number of API calls, we can come out ahead, because we'll be able to save money either if we are paying per an API call, or instead of leaving this plan and needing to go to a more expensive plan. So caching is very, very important. Now, when it comes to caching, you have a couple of options, right? There's all kinds of caching mechanisms, but you can also do client-side caching or server-side caching, right? Just to get started. And so let me go ahead and ask our AI Copilot for some of the options, okay? I also want to implement caching. Can you advise on some ways to do that? No code, just explain. Okay, I wanted to explain, and then I want to select a solution, right? I want a hands-on approach, okay? I essentially want to micromanage this AI agent here, okay? So look at this. We have browser-based caching. We have server-side implementation considerations, Svelte kit-specific approaches, hybrid approach, right? First check browser cache, show cache data, then update, store new data and expiration. So it's giving us this hybrid approach, and it's recommending it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, let's say we want to do number 5, hybrid approach. What kind of changes would you make? Just explain. Okay, let's go ahead and run this. And this is what it's going to do. It's going to create a cache service, update weather component logic, cache structure, loading states, invalidation strategy, right? So for current weather, 30 minutes, which sounds about right. For forecast data, 2 to 3 hours. This is also very important. Okay, so I'm happy with this. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. Okay, let's go ahead and see what it does. All right, so it went ahead and completed this, right? So it says here, we've successfully implemented the hybrid caching approach for the weather app, and it also tells us this implementation balances performance with data freshness, providing an optimal user experience while being respectful of API rate limits. And this is exactly what we want. So I'm going to do accept all over here. And it also ran the app and there are no errors. And so now let me go ahead and see what it looks. And when we refresh it, it says here cache data from 1 minute ago. Okay, so if I do San Diego, updated just now, and if I refresh that, cache data from 1 minute ago. Actually, a really nice touch. I'm not sure if I want to display this for the user. I don't think the user should see this information. It's just cache data, right? But it's still a nice touch, right? So if I type London, we have London. Which London? This London, updated just now. And then if we go back to San Diego, it says cache data from 27 seconds ago, okay? So I don't want to see this. I think this is a nice touch, but I do not want to see this. But what I do want to see is I want to see maybe some kind of a dashboard via another route that will show me some other information like the cache hit ratio, or I don't know. Let it figure it out, but I do not want to see this. So I'm going to go back here and I want to say remove the message, this right here on the main page. On the main page, okay, let's remove this first. I like to work in steps, right? I like to go in baby steps. I found that works the best. All right, so perfect. I've removed all of this. Let's go back here and now it's gone. But what I do want to see is I want to see some kind of a dashboard, okay, via a different page, so that I can see, you know, some information on whether that caching works or not. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to say, can you create a dashboard accessible via another route that displays overall caching performance? Tell me what you'd include on that dash. Just explain. Okay, let's see what it's gonna do. All right, so it wants to display a lot of things, key metrics, interactive elements. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. It's another page. Should not affect the main app. Okay, go ahead and do that. And it is complete. We've successfully implemented a comprehensive cache dashboard. It's telling us what it did. Let's go ahead and see if that works. Okay, so it says here view cache dashboard, and look at this beautiful dashboard. Wow, key metrics, cache storage, recent cache activity, cache operations, right? We have manual refreshes. So let's go back to weather. Let's go over here. And what do we have? 3 cache locations here. London. Let's try another one. Clear, expire, reset metrics. Really nice. Okay, so let's do San Diego. Okay, so now San Diego, this is the newest entry. We have recent cache activity, fresh hit. Really nice dashboard. Look at this. Look at this. Beautiful. Let's try Rome, Italy. And it still matches that. Okay, there we go. Come over here, newest hit. Okay, look at that. Really nice. Very cool. Very, very impressive. Really cool. Next, I want to work on some error handling. Okay, I want to see how the app behaves when there's some issues like a network error, or when the user types something incorrectly, gibberish, or a city that doesn't exist, and and the app tries to get the weather for that non-existent city. Let's make the app a little bit more robust. And so the prompt I'm going to use is create a global error boundary or middleware that displays user-friendly messages for network failures, rate limits, or invalid input. First, just explain. This is going to make our app a lot more robust, and this is a must if you're building a production app. Okay, so it's telling us API request, error boundary component, network, rate, invalid input, server errors, authentication errors. Okay, this is perfect. Go ahead and implement this. All right, and it is complete, right? We've successfully implemented a comprehensive error handling system for our weather app. Here's a summary of what we built: error store, API service, all of these things. And here we're going to accept all. All right, so here's our app. Let's say we type New York and it loads New York. Looks good. Press refresh if you want. And we type something random. Press enter. Nothing happens, okay? And we can go to our dashboard. Dashboard looks good. There's New York, and it did not try to do an API call for this because that did not exist. We can always We can try, let's say, New Orleans. That finds it, refresh, go over here, and we have New Orleans. And let's say a situation where our API key is incorrect. So now let's go ahead and see where the API key is stored. First of all, let me go ahead and ask the system, where is the API key stored? Just explain. Okay, so this is where it's stored. Routes API weather service, routes API weather service. So we go over here. This is the API key. Let's say I add 12 to it. Okay, this reloads, come back to the app, and let's say I type New York. Now it says API authentication failed. There's a problem with the weather service authentication. Please try again later. Okay, and that's gonna happen regardless of what I do. So if I type this, that's not gonna go anywhere, right? That is incorrect because it's not part of the that is invalid. But if I type, let's say Miami, API failure. Okay, so if I go back here, I think I added 1, 2, and that's automatically reloaded. New York. So it looks really nice. I like that dialog box. Really, really cool. I mean, obviously you can add authentication to this as well. Make sure that the user is authenticated if you want it to be, under authentication only. But I really like this approach. Really, really nice. All right, so the app is starting to look really, really good. The other thing that I want to do is I want to change the UI a little bit. I want to make it a little bit nicer. And so I went back to cursor and I said, I'd like to improve the UI for this. Can you suggest some ways we can improve the theme UI here? Just explain, because I don't want it to go out and start changing my code without me having to take a look at it first. All right, so it went ahead and it offered some improvement suggestions, right? Modernize the color scheme, enhance card design, improve typography. So let's go ahead then and implement all of these changes as long as we're not using any third-party dependencies, because that might absolutely break the app. So I'm gonna say, go ahead and make all of those changes. Make sure you're not using any third-party or additional dependencies. And this is the results we got. It actually looks really good. Look at that, cache 25 minutes ago. We can refresh it. We have a cache dashboard and we have this. Look at these effects. Actually, it looks really nice. I mean, it's a little, I don't know about this. The underline with the color fade, I don't know about that, but looks really good. Let's try another city. Look at that. That's also nice. That is fixed. I mean, it looks pretty cool. It looks fairly minimalistic and it works. It looks pretty nice to me. The next thing I want to do is I want to create a test suite, right? I want to be able to run some tests and to see if we are having regressions, meaning that if we add a feature or AI adds a feature and it breaks an existing piece of functionality. So let's go ahead and do this. So I'm going to say generate unit tests for the API service, mocking fetch, and then we can do generate a smoke test or end-to-end test that searches for a city and asserts that the dashboard updates. Okay, so this is very, very important because that way we can keep adding new features, new functionality, and we still are not, gonna have the existing functionality working. We're not gonna be breaking existing functionality. Very, very important. Okay, let's see what it does. All right, so it went ahead and created the test. Now it's telling me that I need to install some dependencies. Okay, I'm gonna do that right now. And now if I run the test, this is what we're getting. Okay, it ran test files 1 passed, test 16 passed. Okay, so these are all the tests that were passed. API request, all of this, right? So here are end-to-end. This is our unit tests over here. There we go. So this looks really good. Now, if you take a look in this unit test file, right, you're going to be seeing a bunch of tests. So if you see like describe, this is the API request function. And if you scroll down, you're going to be seeing this get weather data function. Then you have a bunch of tests. Should call the correct API endpoint, London, and the temperature. This is what it passes, and this is what it compares, right? We have the search locations. So it created a bunch of tests. So we have 16 tests that we can test from time to time as we're adding new features. Okay, so this is really, really awesome. All right, so our weather app is starting to look really, really good. So at this point, I am ready to deploy this app, okay? And we are going to deploy it as a Docker container on a service called Railway. And the reason we're going to be deploying it as a Docker container because it makes it really easy to take what we have here, all the dependencies, everything, and package it in a way that's going to run everywhere pretty much, right? That's the premise of Docker. Okay, and so we're gonna come back into our cursor and we're gonna ask it to generate a Docker file and a Docker ignore file. Generate a Docker file, Docker ignore for the project. All right, there it is. We're gonna accept it. We're gonna create the files, and we have our Docker file as well as the Docker ignore. So the Docker ignore ignores all the things that we do not need, things like secure stuff, as well as things that we can rebuild on the fly, once we deploy this project. And here's our Docker file right here. Right, it packages everything, and now we can easily package it locally, test it out, as well as deploy it on some platform. Now I'm going to go ahead and execute this command over here to build our Docker image. All right, so now we've built our Docker package and we can also run it. So we have this image right here, we can run it, and now it's listening. And so if we come over here, we have it running inside of our Docker container on my local machine. Okay, and so if we have it, if it's working perfectly, and as you can see, it should be working perfectly, we can type something here, it updates it, it refreshes, everything works. And so once you have it working in your own Docker kind of container on your own machine for testing, you're pretty much good to go. You'll be able to install it pretty much everywhere that you want, everywhere where Docker is supported. Okay, and so now we're gonna go to Railway, which is one of the many providers that can run your Docker containers that you can use. And I'm going to go ahead and sign in. Once I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and create a new project, and I'm going to do an empty project. And then I want to set up my project locally here. I'm going to click here. And now it's telling me what to do. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. Okay, and then I'm going to connect this here. I'm going to do Railway login. I'm going to go ahead and open me so that I can authenticate. I'm going to verify. Success. I can close this. Next, I'm going to link it to the project. Okay, link successfully. And now all that's left is to do Railway up. And because we have a Docker container there, it should automatically set it up. Okay, importing to Docker, it's building it, deploy complete. And here we have it, deploy successful. Okay. So now we should be able to view this app. And so now it says deploy successful. If we go into settings, we can generate a domain for this, right? So I'm going to do a generate a domain. And now we have a domain for this. So I'm going to click it and we have our weather app that has been successfully deployed on the internet. Okay. And so here it is. Everything should work. There's Madrid. There's our dashboard right here. All of this, it's cached, everything is cached. And if I go back to Railway, I can actually change this domain here, right? I can make it something like weather app, and let's see if that's available. Not available. So how about weather app 2? Okay, that's available. I'm going to go ahead and update it. And now if I click it, now it's available at weatherapp2.up.railway.app. And I'm going to have a link below this video so that you guys can test it out. Look at this. It's a beautiful app. Nice dashboard. This is cached. I can refresh it. Now it's fresh. We can look at the weather in Miami. Look at that, 26 degrees. Beautiful, partly sunny. We have these nice animations. We can look at Los Angeles. There we go, 14 degrees. There we go. We can refresh it. Beautiful animation. Look at our caches. Looks good. 53% cache hit. Better than 0 if we didn't have it. And so I'm really happy with this app. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think, if you're happy with it, if you want to see some improvements. I'm going to be providing the code for this app to my amazing Patreon subscribers so that you guys can tinker with it, so that you guys can deploy it on different platforms, just get more experience with it, run some prompts, see what happens. And I'm also going to be answering questions over there. So if you're not a member, definitely click the link and become one, because you're going to gain a lot of content, a lot of value inside of our amazing Patreon community. But in any case, if you guys want to see me make more of these apps or continue, improving this app, or maybe make this as part of a bigger app, let me know in the comments below and we'll see if we can continue this series.